Are you the devil? But I didn't see.
All you need to know is you work for me.
That the joke was on me.
Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, normally through news and headlines, but today we have a retrospective episode, a bonus podcast, in which it goes up on Patreon first, and then 4 weeks later it goes up publicly, and in the past we've done Speed Racer, we've taken a look at some of the older movies that we've enjoyed growing up, but this one I wanted to make sure that we got on the podcast before the very real possibility of David Ayer's Suicide Squad or the Ayer Cut eventually releases. So I wanted to discuss the 2016 theatrical cut of Suicide Squad and take a look at it a little bit more deeply, and especially years later, seeing how we may or may not enjoy the movie still, or what parts may have changed throughout those years. And I couldn't have asked for a better support on taking a look at this movie than a once again a pillar of the Snyderverse community, and that is Lord Koj joining this week on the co-host chair. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back, man. It's an honor, and the chair is comfy. I appreciate it.
Do you like it? Is it good?
It's very cozy.
Some other co-hosts have, they've broken it in by now, thankfully.
Oh, it's very warm. Makes sense.
So this is going to be a kind of dissection of this movie. I watched it recently, and in case, this is a little controversial as far as the writing credits, but it was directed by David Ayer, who previously did The Tax Collector, written by David Ayer, who did Training Day, although you can argue that Jeff Johns had a bit of writing in there too, starring Will Smith from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Jared Leto from The Dallas Buyers Club, Margot Robbie, known for I, Tonya, and Viola Davis, known for Fences. And we'll go over trivia at the very end after we've discussed the film itself. But before we get into the particulars of the movie, Koji, I want to get your thoughts from when you first saw this, either in theaters. Did you see it theatrically when it came out?
Yeah, I saw it in theaters twice, actually.
Awesome. I think Kelly and I saw it 2 or 3 times. We saw it multiple times. So your impression right afterward, and then your impression of the movie now, whether it was the last time you saw it or just your overall thoughts on it today. I kind of want to hear your thoughts on your 2016 Koj and 2021 Koj.
All right, because this came out after BVS, so we were watching it right after that fallout. So I thought the movie was all right. It was pretty good. It felt kind of rushed, and the music to me felt really awkward, forced. But for the most part, it was okay. A little bit anticlimactic. I can't remember some of the scenes okay, actually, no, it's coming back to me. But I thought it was okay. And then the second time I saw it was on a date. So my mind was half elsewhere. And it was just okay. It did feel like 2 different things going on, but I bought it at the time. And I do remember Ayer saying at one point, this is, his definitive version, or he supported that notion or something. I was like, oh, okay, well, respect the man, and this is what we got. Cool. So it was just kind of like, okay, it was there. I would give it probably like a grade level B-.
That's a pretty strong grade.
Yeah. Well, I have a weird grade system. To other people, probably a C+.
Gotcha. Yeah, when Kelly and I first saw it in theaters, we went multiple times, and our review on the podcast was glowing. We really enjoyed it. And even up till recently, after Ayer had made everything known, I'm like, I still like the theatrical cut of Suicide Squad. I personally think, yes, there was a lot of meddling in it, but it wasn't to the level of Justice League, in my opinion.
Yeah, because I think the what they changed, the little additional scenes, and then catch on later, they're really quick. and I don't know, go on.
And it mainly came from, you're right, it also mainly came from the editing rather than, okay, let's get these guys back in there for a couple more months of reshoots and we need to change the ending here and all that. It felt like it was more
Right.
that trailer company that they had hired, and they're like, all right, make it more colorful and splashy and make sure the music video kind of works in there somehow. And that's kind of what it felt like when I was watching it. You know, when you compare the Comic-Con trailer of Suicide Squad, which is fucking beautiful,
Oh my God, yes.
and then you compare some of those same scenes to what we get in the theatrical cut, you can see where they did these weird effects, these strobing things, these neon things all over the place. And that's where it's like, all right, to me, at least the film was a little bit more preserved in that sense, where they kind of just did these weird filters throughout all of it. And
Yeah,
yes,
because it has like a very calming, like metallic look that's similar to Man of Steel, even actually more than BVS, I think.
yeah, and not quite as warm or saturated, overly saturated than Justice League was. And up until all of these years, I'm still like, look, I still like Suicide Squad, but I definitely want to see Ayer's version. We were sold a different movie at Comic-Con, and that I want to see that. Because if it's anything like Zack Snyder's Justice League, then it's going to be elevated to a whole new level. And part of me is still disappointed that we don't get a version of Steppenwolf in here or the mother boxes, because all of that was removed before they started filming. But we still got a version of the movie that I think closer sits with, or we're going to get a movie that hopefully sits closer to Snyder's universe rather than what we ended up getting in 2016.
The thing is, it's like I don't see Ayer in this. Like, I don't feel him. I feel a hint of him because we've seen his other films, and especially Bright. I think that's the one he did after this.
Yeah, the Netflix one.
Yeah, I think Netflix Bright was his next film. That was like his Army of the Dead, essentially, going back to Netflix and being free to tell a story using Will Smith also. So yeah, it's just kind of weird because when you rewatch it, I wonder if they did play with the colors a bit even, like what they did is flashback with Harley Quinn and the jail cell guy. There's a lot of weird filter like pinks and greens in that scene, so they did mess with some colors here and there, I felt. But I just went under the radar because they were really quick and brief things. Like it did flow from an editing perspective rather than a post Frankenstein perspective. And I think when we get like a film that's told purely from the director's point, it's always going to have a unique flair and style that doesn't fit with anything else. The problem with this theatrical cut is the more I watch it, the more it just feels like it's trying to run away from itself and be like something else, some other film. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but it doesn't age or sit well, and especially with everything that comes out of like how the film is and went about. I think when we go back to the authenticity of director's cuts and, narrative, I think that's where the new trend is actually going anyways, with all these other movies coming out today. So it's going to be like, I don't know if it'll be as impactful as Snyder Cut, but it'll be impactful in a different way. That's still everything worth it, because that Comic-Con trailer does not match the film that we got.
No.
And one thing you see when you read the novel is that or not see, but in my opinion, you feel and see in your imagination is a narrative of the tone, and the tone is way more seriouser. And I think the comedy and the charm of the characters are still there.
Mm.
It just was overhyped with too many entrance music during the scenes, and I think that when we get these characters, we'll see them. I feel the movie will feel like Predator 1.
Right.
Like it'll have that setting, that kind of level of threat, importance, and then the charm of the characters, I think, will feel more organic with the world. It won't feel so forced.
And especially with that soundtrack that you were talking about, where I think in Ayer's version, we'd get more of a score rather than like pop song after pop song. And some of those songs were made, I found out, were made specifically for the film, and then they ended up being pretty big hits. So, good on the artists and people that enjoyed the songs. But to watch a movie that actually has a score and isn't distracted by, hey, those are the songs from the trailers, popping up in the movie, I think that'll help engross the viewers into his version of the film rather than this distraction of what are they going to play next for this scene.
I totally felt like they were either doing Guardians or Deadpool or both. But the problem with the songs in this film, with the tone, I feel like it rushes the film. I
Yes.
think when we get that score always complements the mood of the setting, the feeling of the characters, the progression of the story and the experiences going on. So I think it'll breathe more and it'll slow it down, but it won't feel slow. I think it'll heighten the sense of like, all right, so we got Deadshot on top of a building, working out the detail of how he's going to take someone out. That could be more fleshed out. Who knows? When he swings down, there might be more action there. Because another thing theatrical cuts like to do is cut up a lot of the action. They like to avoid and save for other parts and stuff like that. And the music was cool, but I also don't think it was entirely made for the film because Warner Bros. Has access to their record label too. So you have all these artists with singles that they're promised to be released at a certain date and all that. And sometimes they're like, hey, let's put them on this album because the Batman Forever soundtrack had a few songs, probably like a very few made for it. But I noticed a lot of the other songs were like B-sides or singles by artists. I don't know if it was made specifically for this. It was released specifically for this. I would probably think is how they did it. But hey, if they did it for the movie, that'd be great. But with the short time that they did with its cut and his assembly cut, I don't know. But it'd be nice to see.
I forgot which song it was. There was one because one of my coworkers at the time, she said they made some of these songs for the movie, and I didn't believe her because I'm like, that's not how they normally do them. And then I looked one of them up, and I'm like, oh shit, yeah, it was made for the Suicide Squad soundtrack, and then the artist could then release it into their album at a later time, which was interesting. So maybe the artist had it done already and then released it first on that Suicide Squad album, and then later, like you were mentioning, the B-sides or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But there were definitely one or two songs that first were heard on the soundtrack before they got publicly released everywhere else on their personal thing.
Definitely, and I think that's good for both the artist and the movie. It's like one of those things that helps both the musician and the filmmakers. So it works out. It just, that's the way it is. And I think it's really cool because the soundtrack slaps, though. It does slap.
Yeah.
It takes me out and away of the movie because they do too many songs in the beginning.
Yeah.
So as the movie progresses, there's no real themes. Like you see Man of Steel or Star Wars, you hear the prominent theme in the beginning and it reoccurs, comes back in different ways. So the theme or mood, even though some movies don't have themes, they still have a type of mood and a style to each musical track. And then when they do that, it kind of progresses as the character progresses. And then the problem when you put too many pop songs in the beginning, but then you don't do that in the middle towards the end, then the theme is like secondhand and then you're not familiar with it. And then it feels like a little bit too much too late or too little too late. It hurts the climax, I feel.
That's a good point, yeah, that you brought that up because I hadn't thought about that before. The only theme I remember from the film is Deadshot's, and you hear it when he first goes up against the Batman where he has that flashback. Then you hear it again towards the end when they're throwing the bomb and he shoots that bullet in slow motion. That's all like that same Deadshot theme. But outside of that, you don't really have anything. You have like these songs that are associated to the characters instead because of their montage intro that are given when Viola Davis is going through that reshot dinner scene.
Right.
And I do want to touch on one of the things you brought up earlier on David Ayer defending the movie, saying, no, this is my cut when it first came out or was coming out. And similar to how Ray Fisher and Momoa during C2E2 or Comic-Con, I think it was Comic-Con, where they're saying that Joss Whedon was handpicked by Zach and that he's a good guy. What do you think about how these actors are and the director are kind of, it's got to be a contract thing, right? Where they have to speak positively about the work for X amount of years?
Yeah, I think it is. Because they sign all different kinds of contracts. That's why actors usually have to go to Comic-Con. Not all actors like that, because right. They have their own goal, their artistry, and this comes off either gimmicky to them or this comes off as awesome to them. But either way, we will not know, or we can assume, or we can get an idea of how they feel. But again, if they're contracted to promote it afterwards and all that, and I think it's also for good faith because it's a studio, so they want to be, hired again for another project. Because the crazy cutthroat thing about the film industry is that you have a job, and then when the task is done, you don't have a job. And then you have to look for the next one. And we all can relate with that. So they have that happen like a mad turnaround when they have, it's nice to go out and promote because, hopefully the promoters are taking care of the actors too. And they can have a little good time at the same time. Talking about it, promoting it, that's definitely contractual. I'm assuming too, because I've only worked at the low commercial and indie side of things. But the same patterns are everywhere too, because again, it's close to like how they sign NDAs and why.
And I remember too when they were having those conversations, and it didn't work for Justice League, but at least with Suicide Squad, when he was saying, "This is my version, this is what I want out there," I think it helped people like us who were just starting to learn about there being changes and studio meddling of like, okay, well, let's go out to theaters and support this thing or buy the Blu-ray or whatever in good faith of like, if this is what David wanted, great. And I can enjoy it and I can check it out. Whereas in Justice League, it did not help any. Like the box office still did not do well on that movie. And I think by then maybe people were kind of, and I went in theaters and I watched it one time and after that, that was it. But I think a lot of people who seemed to know more about what was going on than at least I did at the time, were like, I'm refusing to see it in theaters. And at that point, it didn't work. That no matter how many good things they said about Joss or how Zack, it was his choice to move and not finish the movie, then I think a lot of fans didn't buy it. And because of that, they didn't go and see it. Whereas David Ayers, it still did really well financially. Or not David Ayers, but the theatrical cut.
And also, it's also the caliber. I was thinking deeply about the treatment per director, how the studio treats each director differently. Like some directors come into the studio on a project like a rock star, like, oh, you did so many films, all this blockbuster stuff. Like, oh, it's just throwing James Gunn, because I think he got that treatment. And then you'll have a critically acclaimed artist who's not popularly known, like David Ayer. He comes in like, oh, this will be cool, but he's like, whatever. And regardless of whatever his work has done, industry people look at each other differently. And I think they treat David Ayer as still a new kid on the block or something like that. He's definitely low tier treated, I think. And Zack Snyder, I think he gets a mixed bag because he's kind of like a rock star. He's got a lot of fans, a lot of fame, good, bad, hopefully mostly good now. It's like he'll be treated different. And I think David Ayer has maybe been too nice, or I don't know. I don't want to no, I don't want to say that because it sounds like I don't know the guy, but it feels like they're all treated different. And I think we could see that too outside the studio, but we could see it with fans. Like how many David Ayer fans are there compared to the Snyder fans, and how are they perceived in the same way and treated? And but yeah, I think that'll also determine how the film is received, because when 2016 this film came out, it's kind of under the radar. I don't remember David Ayer doing too many films at this level of fantasy as he's done with Bright. So I think with the changes and the studio cut kind of went more under the radar for us, because it's kind of like we're seeing him getting into CBMs or this genre, whereas Zack Snyder, we're more familiar with his style with this genre, so we can kind of tell more when things have been meddled. And this one we'd have to look harder, and then if there's any positive press, we'll probably buy it like we did.
Yeah, I think it was David's biggest film at the time too. Like I know Training Day was huge, but this one I believe made the most money from his films up to this point, at least.
Yeah, this was going to be his breakout film, and it's possible. It's so possible. The studio people are aware of that. So the thing with all these especially with DC properties, it always feels like a custody battle when I hear this stuff. It's like, how many changes can they do to take creative control for the next one or the IP of this after? I have a feeling a lot of that got mixed in too. Yeah. Because Justice League, all the changes looked like it was leaning more towards Jeff Johns' IP and this and that or whatever. So it seems like the studio's not just trying to put these movies out, but they're trying to get their way for whatever reason. they need to do it either to please this guy or please so and so who's financing or funding it, the investors, and who knows what they think. And it's just like it's a big hodgepodge mess that shouldn't affect this. It's like too many cooks in the kitchen, man. Who shouldn't be there?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
it's harder to tell with this because they keep distracting. Now I have this playing on the background, and that little pinkish green filter keeps flashing every now and then. I didn't realize how often they did it until I mentioned it.
It's color, man. It needs color. It needs to be like
Oh,
the
it needs
MCU.
color.
It needs like a cartoon.
Cha cha cha. When he shoots my boy Common, it's like this weird flash of like 4 to 5 sequences that don't really make sense.
Yeah, that was fucking
he's
terrible.
driving his car. I was like, what?
And that's one thing I didn't notice until I knew that Common shoots himself in Ayer's cut and it's not the Joker. So this last time when I watched it, I really noticed how bad that weird cut of him just pointing the gun, Jared Leto pointing the gun, is like this front shot of him. And I don't know how they made that work, because it seems like he never did that when they were shooting that particular scene. So I don't know if that was a different
There
scene
could have
or if
been
they
a
got
scene where he held the gun and then they got that shot from a different camera angle because these people were cutting from the footage that they had. So
Yeah.
he could have, like, who knows, maybe pointing the gun at someone else and they just cut and put it at the end to, fix that up. It's just that it's weird because I hate that they take that out, because one thing that Joker has that Batman doesn't have, and I think you can agree with me, is that Joker has that cult of personality. And in fact, I think the Joaquin Phoenix film of Joker, that whole thing was around a cult of personality. Dude did something shocking on TV and all this stuff and crazy stuff, and then he's got this whole riots in the street in his name and image. It's like that is a part of Joker's power. He has this cult of personality. That's why he's able to get this well-educated psychiatrist to lose her mind and go on his side, and then other people to follow him either out of fear or admiration or twisted sense of both. So not seeing Joker get some other criminal to shoot himself, not seeing that, we are robbed of that, like, I guess, that evil special power that Joker has over people. Now I'm going to jump back even further to like freaking Conan the Barbarian. You have Thulsa Doom. He says like, steel isn't strong, flesh is stronger, because what is steel compared to the hand that wields it? And then he proves to Conan, he just tells the girl to kill herself, jump off, just because he said so, and she does it. And then he's like, look at the power I have. I can convince anyone to do anything because I've convinced all these people I'm a god. And he doesn't say that, but that's pretty much what he's doing, facing Conan, saying he can do all that. Now, back to Suicide Squad. That's something Joker had, and we were going to see that on screen, and we're going to see exactly how dangerous Joker is from the get-go, from the beginning, and that would have been fantastic, because these are villains, and villains are all extensions of evil, so it's just different kinds, and it was just an opportunity lost there, and then I think that would really set the tone of why this Joker is so different. I don't know if people are trying to protect Heath Ledger's performance before, or they didn't like this Joker, but it's a really big shame that we don't get that Joker, this full-fledged out new Joker, or not new Joker, but for the screen, this Joker we haven't seen before.
And that's going to be a theme in this episode of, like, at least for me, of oh man, we could have gotten this or we could have gotten that, because now we know a little bit more about the original cut of it. And since we're on Joker, let's go ahead and talk about Jared Leto's portrayal, because one of the things, especially since you're mentioning the personality that he has as a character, not even just his performance, but all the iterations of Joker as a character, especially in the 70s when they really made him what he is today, more of a dangerous character, or someone that is truly deadly to the Batman, with Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil. What do you think about this criticism that it seems like most of the people that I've seen that criticize Jared Leto's Joker are mainly still pointing out the look of the character or the design, where they're talking about the tattoos and all of this talk about, well, the Joker would not, this is something I kept seeing today after the other image of David Ayer's Joker, when they were doing the different takes on him, when they were just trying to figure out still the look of him. And people were like, this goes against what Joker's about, because he wouldn't be self-promoting himself with tattoos of haha and smiles. And I'm like, he does a lot of that in the comics. He's constantly plugging himself on TV and taking over channels. Like, self-promotion is a huge part of the character. You can do different things with that story-wise, but that's a staple of the Joker. So I never understood that criticism when it came to this iteration, this more modern version of the Joker.
I didn't get that either because I think the stress that DC faces, it's just like I can't pinpoint. I think you brought up the 70s. I think people are still stuck and hung up on the characters in the 70s, and I'm not taking the actual 70s. I mean the portrayal of comic book characters at that time. And I think people like the Joker portrayal of like the Batman animated series because it was a combination of his look was all the 70s look, but his behavioral attitude in the animated series is more modern thug gangster. Like he did some messed up stuff in that animated series brilliantly, you know. Now we come to this film. I think they not hyper realistic, but they really brought him into this type of situation, this type of world, because it is very hyper realistic Snyderverse is, and I like that because well, not hyper realistic because I think it has more fantasy elements than, let's say, Nolan. Nolan's probably more hyper realistic, but this is more realistic and gritty and to that real life type of situation of like, you know, where these places are, alleys have been there for ages and decades and looks all beaten up, there's trash, all these details, and it's not like super clean like a cartoon, you know, brought to life like other CBMs I don't like, but it has that reality of grit. Now you take that setting and you apply it to the criminal element that we've seen in BVS, and they're actual criminals. Like we're seeing like the guys with the tattoos on the face, the hands, and all, they're not thrown around wishy-washy. They're personal, you know, a lot of detail to, you know, what's going on with like what we're familiar in the real world. Now you put Joker in that situation, not just Joker, but Joker who does jail time. Joker who does jail time. And Joker, people forget that he's also a fashionista. Like he likes his look. He's specific on his look. He's like a rock star David Bowie in his own mind or something. And so if you have Joker who expresses himself like that and you put him in prison or even before that coming up, I would definitely see him tat up. It's just another part of the fashion. It's just part of this world. I expected that because from Man of Steel, we've seen a redhead Lois Lane. Usually she's brunette or dark haired, right? So from the beginning of that, we're like, okay, we're going to see new reiterations of these characters because this is a new universe. So when it is, it's just kind of, you can't hold it to like past representations because it's just not where we're at right now. We're trying to get to a closer to home DC world than what was happening before, you know? So I think it's just perfect. I think it's just people are too familiar with their looks, their stereotypes, or their favorite iconic looks, and then they just want to do that. And I'm like, well, do that, then that's always there. You have an enormous amount of that style, and then there's different styles. Like even like what in the Batman the animated, a Joker looked like Lobo. He was kind of like
right.
He's totally different. No one said crap about that. I guess maybe it's just a cartoon, but the same thing. The stigma of like, oh, it's just a cartoon. Oh, this is a movie. It's got to be approached better or different. Those are all wishy-washy stuff, man. I just think people are too picky because they're looking at the frosting instead of tasting the cake. That's some Zach would probably say, I think. But yeah, and I just think it's just too reachy. It's just people who, or they just don't like it, but whatever. But when they go so hard at it, that this film has been around for a while, it's just people who don't want to check it out, who don't want to give it a chance. And that's fine, but just don't talk to other people about it.
I agree that it's all very surface level as far as like when they criticize this. And we'll talk about the performance here right after this. And one of the things that I noticed with David Ayer, especially with his background, he grew up in, I think it was LA, and he grew up in that exactly. So when Jared Leto talked about some of the stuff that he did to study for the Joker, I know one of the things he mentioned is going to prisons and talking specifically to Mexican gangsters that were in jail and studying up on cartel members as well. So it seemed like David Ayer, when he was writing this script, he wanted to have a very personally influenced Joker, something that he was familiar with, more than likely people that he came across and from that underworld. And that's when he helped I'm thinking he helped in that design of Joker, of making it a more LA gangster influenced iteration of the character. So when you know that about David, it makes a lot more sense. And something else, even if you didn't know about this, people forget that in 2016, even a little before that, when they first announced this movie and Joker's going to be in it, they were going up against an Academy Award winning performance from Heath Ledger, the late Heath Ledger.
Mm-hmm.
And so they needed to make something that was its own thing, just like the previous iterations of Joker were. Each one stood on its own. It explored a different facet of the Joker, and they've continued to do so with Joaquin Phoenix's, and before that, this one, Jared Leto's, which was so radically different in look and performance than Jared Leto's or Jack Nicholson's or Mark Hamill's. But then you look at what he does in the film, how he's written and how he performs. It's at its core, it's the Joker. This is beyond superficial.
Mm-hmm. I would say Christopher Nolan's Joker is more of a different iteration, because
That's true.
even his face, he had more of that Takashi Miike Itchy the Killer look, and even the cover of some of the posters look like an Itchy Killer poster, with the slit faces and all that. And that depiction of Joker was totally different too, what we're used to, because he's like, okay, I want to do this, and then he just, no, you're crazy, he jumped between emotions all erratically and very fast. It was so exciting. Again, totally different though from what we're used to, but that was accepted. Now with Leto's performance, I challenge, well, not challenge, but I suggest people try this. It's like the scene where Joker is talking to Harley, power becomes pleasure, or whatever the heck. If you close your eyes and listen to it, to me that sounds a lot like Joker, closer to the Mark Hamill vocal performance even, because I feel the looks are totally different, but his attitude, persona was a combination of his own take, and I felt it felt really much like Joker. He got into the psyche of what makes his Joker tick, what makes him find amusing in the chaos that he, subscribes to or whatever. I think it's totally a looks thing, because we've seen crazy look changes of all three Jokers that you mentioned, but Leto gets a biggest issue. I think that's manufactured. I think that's from the studio, because a lot of things studios are told they don't like to do is it's like when they get close to the streets, they always step away. Like when they get close to doing something about what real criminals look like or whatever, it'll either be a smaller film or whatever, but when it's a bigger film, I feel like they want to shy away from that, because then by the time we get to Justice League, you get that weird cat burglar on the top. He looks like a regular dad shopping at Best Buy, that I talked to about like soccer practice or whatever. And it's like you see those two differences. They're really trying to escape reality. Whereas the beauty of Ayer, who's been through this stuff, he brings that reality to this fantasy world, which I think is the goal of Snyderverse, is to combine these fantasy elements, like how in a real world will we see a Doomsday? And then they showed it to us. It had a huge story build up to that. And when we see it interact with the world, it's more believable, because with how they look, and it's not just like a copy paste background, backdrop, whatever. It's not all flat. And I like the depth and texture of every tiny detail, and just Joker's look captures that beautifully, I think. Even his car looks like that that sleek purple of the outfit he likes to wear. I was like, dang, see, he likes to accessorize. And I think that's the cool thing about Batman villains, is that they think they are the shit and they're not afraid to flaunt it, and I love that. I forgot if we can curse here, but yeah,
you can, absolutely.
Okay, good. So it's great to see that, and not just that, but also people need to put the looks aside, because we're seeing Joker as a mob boss. I think Jack Nicholson was the only Joker we've seen as a mob boss, and it was really breath of fresh air to see that on the screen again with Jared Leto's Joker, and I love that. And he had a system, because he had his right-hand man and he had a bunch of underlings or whatever, and it was very well put together.
And I like that we pulled so much from just watching the theatrical version, because we know that his scenes were cut out so much from this version that the bits that we got to see from him are still impressive. We still get a sense of what he was going for in this universe's Joker. And I even though I noticed now when I rewatched it, there's like a couple of 80-yard scenes here or there where they had to change the dialogue.
Oh, like the fur what? Something with the fur rug or whatever?
Yes. Yeah, and the
I
grape
hated that
soda.
one.
Yeah.
You don't even see his jaw move. He's just looking at her. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna lay you on it." I was like, "What? Your jaw isn't even moving. What the fuck?"
Yeah. And
Oh.
you can tell from the sound too that it was recorded after the fact when they just inserted in there. So, I mean, stuff like that, and it's like, fuck, man, it's terrible. But when you see the scenes that were shorter with him in it, that you can tell were not tampered with, at least just cut down, it's still impressive to see what he did, and it does leave us wanting more. And I think that's why when we got more in the Snyder cut, it was great, because it's like, this is awesome. We want more of this Joker. As little as we got from him in Suicide Squad, we got more in the Snyder cut. It's like, this is amazing. That's a trump card right there for if you want a Justice League 2 and 3. You heard so many people like, I didn't like him in Suicide Squad, but I liked him in the Snyder cut. And I'm sitting here like, it's the same.
It's the same dude.
Yeah, it's the same fucking Joker.
If
He's
anything,
just
he
more
looks
weathered down
offensive
in the
in
other
Snyder
one. But
Cut, right? He looks more offensive in Snyder Cut, doesn't he? Isn't he like some Messiah look and whatever with dishwashing gloves? I don't know. Whatever.
he had
just
that.
like-
there was that promo shot of him like with like the Christ thorns on him, and like that.
Yeah.
That got it. But that was for clicks. You know, Snyder knew that was great promotional material, and it worked. It got people talking about the movie. But
Well, it's
yeah,
great to share that because they always have photo sessions. You want to have a good photography session before you go to cinematic photography, and it's just great that he was able to share that, trying a couple things, and to go to such creative lengths just for a photo shoot. I love it.
Yeah,
That's the meat behind all this, and Zack Snyder is not just a visual director. Oh, I don't know. We'll go back to Zack Snyder, but he's an actor's director as well. Some directors don't tell actors shit or don't know how to communicate to them. So what they do is that they just have them do whatever, and just say, all right, look here or whatever. But you get directors like Zach and even Ayer who can communicate to the actor and get them on the same page with what's going on with the scene and what's going on with the emotions. It just, because directors should be also, like, in my opinion, directors should also be not a coach to tell the actor what to do, but to encourage them, like be in their corner to bring out their best performance and allow creativity. And with when we hear stories of like Jared Leto trying in character stuff, going to prison and all that, that's encouraged by the director too. And character study is amazing, and that's such a beautiful performance to see when someone really studies the character. It's breathtaking, and we've seen that like with you saw that Robin Williams little promo or test footage. I don't know if you've seen that one that was circulating, but that was fantastic. And the guy did so much character study. Now we're getting that quality in Suicide Squad, and they cut it out.
Yeah.
The disrespect.
I know.
Man.
Hopefully we'll get to see his full performance sometime in the future.
You will.
But
I
I think so too, yeah. The other members of the Suicide Squad, including the villain Enchantress, as I'm going back and watching this, I saw from Will Smith's performance, because I think he is the lead of the film and in the heart of it, especially with his relationship with his daughter and how he's trying to do good and try to not necessarily prove to his daughter that he's not a bad person, but that he's simply trying to see her again and trying to get her out of that bad situation that he seems to be in, or that she seems to be in with her mom, as they hinted at when he was in Gotham of, she sleeps a lot, and I know how to make breakfast, and he's like, she's supposed to be taking care of you. So it seems like his heart is in the right place too, of he wants to care for his daughter, he wants to be there for her, but his line of work is eventually going to get him put away, which eventually that does happen. So his performance as Deadshot, I think they put a lot of heart in it, because normally a character like that, it could have easily been a contract thing of, well, you'll get this bounty if you do this for us, or we'll get you out of jail. But they put in this story of family in there, which is also reflected in the rest of the members of the Suicide Squad, and that other bit of sense of family that they build among themselves, especially towards the end. I think that seems to be the theme that Ayer was going for when he was doing this movie.
I agree, man, because Ayer being familiar with the streets, more familiar than I've been with the streets. Now, In my time, I've just been like a dance teacher, and a lot of programs I've done for like 3 years in the past was after school programs just to keep kids productive, active, and stay out of getting in trouble in certain areas. You hear these stories of what these kids go through, and some with who were in horrible homes before, then they're with better family now. And one key thing that gets us out of dark places as a theme is a sense of family. Now that could be organic or with friends or adoptive or whatever, but family gets you out of tight places, and it's what you want to embrace when you have it, because it's not a lot of people have that, like a healthy family situation. So you see Deadshot here, who his daughter's like 10, something like that. So he's been clearly assassin forever and all that, but now at this point in the film, he's trying to make big bucks, because if he needs to take care of his daughter, he needs to provide for her. So he's probably trying to do these big things for a house. Probably he needs to pay lawyers for custody. Mm-hmm. He's thinking big things for his daughter, but to get there, he has to be best at this horrible job that he can do. So maybe he could retire for life and just take care of his daughter. And that's very heartfelt driven motivation I would like to see more fleshed out, and I believe it is, and it just hits home because Will Smith as an actor, he's a family man. David Ayer, he's a family man. A lot of us are family men, and to the women too, family women. It's just like that's like something worth fighting for, because a lot of people, a lot of stories, characters will do something sacrificial, but it's harder to live for someone else, I think. Or it's more noble to live for someone else. And I think that little human to these villains in this adventure, and it'd be nice to see more of that. And the thing with the whole cut and then making it more commercial, it just distracts away from that core important part. That might be cheesy to some, but that's what humanizes these characters as they go on this crazy journey.
The other members of the Suicide Squad, was there one aside from Deadshot that you felt like you related a lot to, or that you might want to see more of in the Ayer cut?
El Diablo.
Yes. Thank you.
His little story is again family, but he went too far and fucked up, and he's the cause of his own family not being there anymore. So he's like the same drive of what matters to him in family, but he's coming from a place where he messed up and he went too far. His villainy killed his whole family, took everything that mattered away from him. So he's got this other arc of finding, let's say, a new family or a new purpose. And the fact that he does not die. Come on, the dude who does fire materializes up in fire, and then you kill him with fire. Come on, what the fuck? Someone needs to get fired. That's dumb, man. What the hell? I think they killed him off for time. Because if there's less characters to do or whatever, maybe they didn't like him. Because also you're making, if the studio is saying, oh, the villains look like this, and one of them has tats all over and he's going to be a hero, we can't have that. We'll just kill him.
Well, Jay Hernandez, he recently, not recently, but I think last year, he revealed that he had to fight for that character arc of, no, I want to put in there that he murdered his wife and kids unintentionally. He lost control and burned the whole house, the whole place down. And they wanted it to where, no, he burns the house down, and they're afraid of him. So that's when he's like, all right, I lost my family over my behavior. And that's what they wanted. But he was like, no, he has to lose his family. It has to be by his hands. Otherwise, it's not as believable that he would have just put it all down. Like, no more, that guy doesn't exist. And they said, okay, if we're going to put that in there, then the studio did not want a character that murdered kids and his wife to live. So that was the compromise that they went with.
No compromises, man.
Yeah, that's right. Not even in the face of Armageddon, right?
Because here's the thing. Not even in the face of Armageddon. Because the thing is, you compromise, you lose more message. And then of the message of the heart of the story, and when you do that, all you're getting is what I call emotional propaganda. Because you're taught not to care about certain people and be like, good, you'll die. No redemption for you, or something like that. And it gets in more typecasting. I don't like that. Because the logic of that is not kind. The logic of that is too fear-based, and I don't know. I just don't like that at all, because it's more. It's like a weird kind of prejudice,
Even back when Kelly and I were watching it in the theater, when you see the movie, and he gets blown up or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, the water was underneath. I expected Killer Croc to pull him out, like from underneath, because he was down there, and like pull out like his unconscious body or something. And it's like, oh, Diablo made it, and he's not there. And I tweeted out, I think a week or two, you might still be able to find it online, like the search for Diablo or something. Like, come on, Suicide Squad 2, the search for Diablo. We need that. Like,
Yeah,
even back then, I couldn't accept that he had died. It was just such a cool character. Turns into this giant Aztec warrior when he blows up. I don't know if that's exactly like in the comics, but in this one, it's just incredible how, yes, he turned into that thing that he was afraid of, but he was in control, which was amazing.
And that's like his arc. He was able to solve his issue and then find control, because lack of control took everything from him. Oh, that's just beautiful. And on top of that, I don't get much Killer Croc or Katana doing some cool shit. You have this amazing martial artist with a sword, and then you got this meta-human from Gotham. And there's not many meta-humans. I mean, we got like Clayface and Mr. Freeze, and you got Killer Croc, and then a few others that are not famous. And then you have Killer Croc, but you don't even use him. Like, you don't even have any speed, strength, jumps, tosses. Not even like a suplex or something. I don't know. He just didn't do more. All he did was swim around and then throw a bomb and then just grin. And I'm like, oh man, there had to be more of that, because we know it was supposed to be the Hammerhead King Shark there, like, ripping people apart or whatever. So if you're going to replace it with Killer Croc, have Killer Croc there ripping people apart or whatever. But
I didn't know that's cool. I didn't know it was supposed to be Hammerhead or King Shark.
I think so, because that was one of the early drawings or sketches of like King Shark.
I think you're right. Yeah,
I remember seeing that, and the thing
concept art.
Yeah, and this pissed me off too. The thing was that they had an issue with, like, they didn't know where to put the eye line, because the eyes of the shark on the far right and far left, is spread out. And I was like, that's stupid. Just make a point in the middle. Look at the character from distance from the middle, or if the character is close to you, put marks on each eye. Because they did this for Jar Jar. Just, they put this thing on top of his head so you could see his eye line. His eyes are these two wobbly, like freaking snail things or whatever. But do that with King Shark. Put one in the middle for the guy wearing the head, the prosthetic. The guy wearing the prosthetic, put one in the middle for his head. And then the two extensions, put another eye line, like a little ball or whatever you want, on one eye and then one on the other. So, and just tell the actors to look at whatever's closer. And if you're too far, look at the head. And then boom, you solve that. But then I feel like, I don't know. These solutions are all based on like either little weird visual control-y kind of micromanage me or cheap approaches,
It got them the Academy Award though, that Killer Croc costume and makeup.
Hey, it worked out because that's beautiful. Sometimes you save for a later idea, but dang, the art in this, like how they look, and oh wow, I just saw the Phil Jackson diamond thing. That's so weird, because all the people in the background went away. Anyways, but yeah, it's just, as much as there's so much detail done into the looks and stuff, there was that to the story. So why cut the story? I think they're just looking at the looks with this whole film and the whole idea of comic book films. Ugh, I don't like the meddling, man.
No, me neither. And I think we could have gotten more of Katana too. You had brought her up, like that scene of her, because in the theatrical cut, she just shows up in the hangar helicopter of like, this is Katana, and you get she takes her victim's soul through her sword, and it's like, that's what we get. But then later we get that little flashback of her going after these Yakuza, I think. And
they look like Yakuza gang.
And they're talking, she's blaming them over her husband's death and how they're killers, and I feel like that scene probably was longer and probably near the beginning of the film, because we have that curse of knowledge now of, we know that that montage that Viola Davis has in that dinner table, all of that was at the beginning of the film, where it's not told by her necessarily. It's an opening scene of Enchantress, the first time she gets cursed, and it's a longer scene, and then we get another scene of whoever's, probably Harley Quinn, and how she was corrupted by the Joker, and that whole dinner scene was completely different. That was the 2016 or the 2014 Comic-Con trailer, where you see that they completely refilmed all of that, and that's one of the problems.
Oh, yeah, I really wanted that, because that is this is more in Batman's world because it's closer to his element with all the type of villains in there, even though it's a bunch of DC villains. And since Batman's in it, I feel this is closer to Batman's kind of town and kind of lifestyle and whatever. So we're seeing more of that. And to see them just have dinner and talk about these guys that they bring out the file, and then when they bring out the file, we see a scene of them. That's still Batman, because remember that episode in the animated series, Almost Got Him?
Yeah.
That was the same shit. They're all sitting around the table, bringing up, it's like, well, I almost got him, and then scene. And then they're like, haha, fine, blah, blah, blah. Well, I almost, or whatever. And then scene. And then you see it's dope. And it would have been so cool to see that on the screen, because then that's more Batman storytelling style that we've seen before. It would have been so great. But again, studios don't read comics or even see their own animated films, maybe. But it's just such a travesty. And especially with Katana. Now, I love martial arts films. I love martial arts. It's been like my whole life. It would have been great to see some more of that, not her just swinging like a bat. And not only that, but when you look at films with fantasy and magic, like, Lord of the Rings, or, freaking Chronicles of Narnia, or whatever. You could, list goes on. I'm just lazy right now. But they introduce an element or an item, or even freaking Indiana Jones, Last Crusade. They're looking for the cup, right? The cup of Christ. And then they have all these elements, these items that have great, fantastic, paranormal, or sci-fi, or magical powers. And they do that because it's usually a key, a tool. We have this character who's an amazing warrior who has a fantastic weapon that could pretty much like fatality Shang Tsung anyone with a slice.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't use that for the end boss in the film. Or at least use a little bit of that, because there's this little story of her probably getting possessed, and then she fights them.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Because it's either used as a key to win in the end, or it's turned against the heroes, the tool.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually, it's either one or the other, traditionally speaking. And we didn't get none of that. Again, it's like introducing cool stuff and not paying off towards the end. And Katana's another one wasted. And I know she's got way, way more cool stuff, because, Karen Fukuhara, I think that's her last name. She's an amazing actress. Her voice acting is dope. I love her on The Boys. It's just like, come on, let this actress shine more. What the hell?
A couple of the characters that on my rewatch, I was like, all right, this is one thing that suffered a lot for me on this latest watch, was the villains of Enchantress and Incubus in this. And I understand, I don't know if it's different in the Ayer cut, but her motivation here of they worship machines now, they no longer worship us, and we're going to destroy them and use machines to destroy them, because that's the poetic nature of their, revenge against humanity, or the way that they're going to get people to worship them again, is what I got from this story. And the whole bit of Incubus kind of just being discovered on the shelf when I was rewatching it, and she's just like, oh brother, and she grabs him and opens him up, and he possesses someone else and is there to help her. I don't know if that's any of this is gonna improve in the Ayer cut. And one of the things that I was telling Kelly, I was like, holy shit, man, it still would have been so much better if she was under the influence of the mother box, and that we had gotten Steppenwolf there, and we had gotten the parademons in there, and that portal would have been a boom tube to Apocalypse. It's just amazing how much better that all could have tied in instead. And I know Ayer said that none of that made it into his cut of the film. So do you think that any part of Enchantress or Incubus could be improved anywhere in Ayer's cut?
Yeah, but not for going back to what we lost.
Yeah.
Because there's some things that they were going to do, but they just didn't do it, and they did something else. Kind of like, the idea of Metallo being the villain in BVS instead of Doomsday or whatever. It's just like, okay, that was an original idea, but we just didn't go with it and film it. Things changed before we filmed. That's just the way things are. And I don't think we can get that mother box connection. It would have been very nice, though, But it's just that I think the key thing is that the villain isn't really Enchantress and her brother. That's just half of it. The villain is Enchantress, her brother, and Joker. Because I think, we're going to see more of his involvement with her, of how to achieve their goals and taking over and whatever. And you gotta the book has a good insight of what it was going to be like, and I love that book.
The novelization?
Yeah, novelization is very nice, and it's got old novelizations are always good. They always have extra stuff in there from the director's notes, and they just flesh it out. But even that was changed a little bit to fit the theatrical one on the way out. Joker's involvement, man, I think that's going to really wow everybody. I think that's going to fill in all these gaps of the villain's goal and how they're operating and why when we see more of Joker's involvement. And because we're talking about 40 minutes are missing, bro. 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a whole 1 hour episode of anything on TV, like 24 or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a lot of storytelling. We've seen what could happen in 4 minutes of like a great director storytelling. A lot of story.
That's true.
So 40 minutes. Oh man.
Well, we're talking. We haven't touched on Margot Robbie's, in my opinion, great performance as Harley Quinn, and this is something that ties into the Joker that you brought up here, where it feels like in Ayer's cut, Joker is less lovable as a character towards Harley, and he's more of an abusive character towards her. And in the theatrical, they might have changed it to be more of a loving relationship of him rescuing her at the very end. Whereas from what I understand, it's more of a "you're not going anywhere, you're mine" type of relationship, and that was changed in between the different cuts. So Harley Quinn herself, being someone who I think in Ayer's cut breaks away from the character of the Joker, especially since we know that she has this hookup with Will Smith, then we got that separation from him way before whatever the hell they ended up doing in Birds of Prey. That was all in this version of Suicide Squad. And I think they really did a nice job of setting her up as this is what she looks like when she is on the Joker's right-hand side, and this is her now with again family, a different theme, a new lover, and on her own, more independent than ever. And that's something that she herself has her own arc. And I don't know if this is in Ayer's cut either, but her supposedly betraying Enchantress and saying, I'm sticking with my friends instead of you who will make wishes appear, I think says a lot about Margot and what they did with her character.
Oh, definitely. I think the fact of Joker being abusive and controlling is even more close to their story because he's always been abusive and controlling. Like in the stories, the games, the comic books, the animated shows, he's been very mean to her, almost putting her life on the line recklessly. Because it's like his relationship with her is like Lex Luthor's relationship with I'm forgetting her name, his right hand woman.
Oh, Mercy.
Mercy, there we go.
Mercy Graves.
It's the same thing as that because Lex Luthor and Mercy have a weird, cold working relationship, whereas with Joker and Harley, it's a toxic, unhealthy relationship because this guy's a villain. He's the Joker. He's into destruction, murder, all kinds of bad stuff. Just look at the whole list of like Simon Phoenix from Demolition Man. That's pretty much everything Joker's into. And you have like the abusive side of Joker with Harley is something I feel like as Harley gets more popular, they shy away from for some reason. And I think we're losing something special because Harley Quinn's triumph as a character and her growth is realizing, even though she's, in this villain circles, that she's in an unhealthy relationship and she breaks free from that is her biggest triumph. And we could have got that in this film because we do get a little bit in the animated film, The Suicide Squad, where she does ditch Joker for Deadshot. Wait, did she?
Yeah, and also which was based on the New 52 comics in which the same thing happens.
That's why I thought this would have been great. And then having Joker because again, I think also people, they want to market Joker as a character to sell. Like, when I go to the toy section for my kids, I like, my nieces and nephews. It's like, you see like in the Play School thing, they have little Joker ones and he's all happy. It's like, what? It's just weird because I think just how they want to market all these characters, I think they want to play it safe and they do things like all these changes to nerf them, to make them softer, not threatening. And I think that hurts the characters more because the cool thing about DC as opposed to Marvel's. DC has a real sense of good and evil as their storytelling. Like the bad guys are really bad and they do bad things and they reflect bad people in real life.
Yeah.
Whereas opposed other things are kind of a little too cartoony and all that. And we need that because villains are villains for a reason. But then again, we're in a trendy age where villains get, they're heroes now saving Dalmatians or something. And that was a shot. But I just feel like
I didn't catch the reference. Who was that villain?
Cruella de Vil.
I gotcha. Yeah.
So then you're losing the person's role who's the threat. And that's part of the story. All these villains, good guys, side characters, bad characters, they all play a role in telling the story of good versus evil. Then when there's you nerf the evil, you lose the message and merit of what the good needs to stand for and stand and overcome. I don't know. It's like you put more bumper lanes when you're going bowling. It's like, take the bumper lane. Come on, let's go.
That's why just on Batman's Rogues Gallery alone, you can just put that gallery of characters against all of the Marvel Universe or all of Image Comics or all of Boom Studios. And that alone, you can be like, try to make an argument, man, just Batman's villains alone. But that's just the fact of how DC has handled these characters throughout the years. Cause you can add in Superman's Rogues Gallery or the Flash's or Wonder Woman's. And it's like, it blows it all out of the water. They truly do have, in my opinion, they have the best characters, but they definitely have the best villains. A lot of people, their best will say like Green Goblin. It's like, okay, that's he's a great character, but it's not the Joker. It's not Lex Luthor. There's characters that will already overshadow him. So that speaks a lot to that volume. And to Harley Quinn, Kelly and I were pretty big. We could have been pretty big critics of this portrayal of, and we were really nervous watching it, or at least going into it, because I grew up on Batman the Animated Series. We had rewatched all of those episodes well before, Man of Steel and all of that. And I showed her all of those episodes, and she really attached herself to Harley Quinn. It was such a fun character for her. And then when they did her in the New 52 in the comics, she was a big critic of that. Like, why take away the Jester outfit? It's so perfect. And they put her in this other thing. And then since then, I think they've nailed the look, and the character has evolved. And I think now they've gotten to a point where, okay, this is a better version of what they tried to do in the New 52. So, but back then it was like, what are you guys doing? Why are you changing the character so much when she is relatively new still? She was made in the 90s. This isn't needed. She's still growing in the comics. She's still pretty new. So when we saw this and there was no Jester outfit in the main version of the movie, we do see that flashback, and that was a great tribute to the character. But it was like, we were both like, this is good. Margot nailed it. The whole essence of Harley Quinn, much like the Joker, is there. And if they had gone more radical with Harley's design, I think people could have easily also been like, fuck that version, because I don't like that they added too many tattoos on her, or whatever the stupid thing might have been, or a grill if they added that on her, or if she was bald. But it's like the essence of her is still there, much like Jared Leto's. So I was really happy with that. And on the rewatch still, I'm really happy. And I want to see more. And that's the problem. I want to see more of Harleen Quinzel and her descent into madness, and how she really worked with the Joker before they got separated, when she got put away. And it was just me as a Harley Quinn fan. Same with Kelly. I thought they nailed it. Now, back when she reviewed it, she did, and I still thought it was nice to see that difference of, she still liked that we saw a Joker that seemed to legitimately care about her, and that was something we really hadn't gotten, because as she even said back then, she's like, the Joker uses Harley. He's all about Batman, and will easily let her go for Batman to get at him or to bug him or whatever it is. So to her, it was refreshing to see, like, she was caught up in that romance of, like, he really does care about her. But I think it's still a matter of, deep down, she knows, and we all know, that that's not really the Joker, at least his relationship with Harley.
I think what we got in this one was, like, the Joker that she wished she had. Yes. But it's not really Joker.
Exactly.
And I loved Harley in this. I think she nailed it, because, again, looks aside, if you like it or not, you close your eyes, you hear Harley Quinn. Just like I believe you hear the Joker. Just like the same brilliance you have with Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, I think is doubled with Jared Leto's Joker if he had more time to shine,
Yeah.
just like she did. And I feel like the studio saw this film as Harley Quinn as a lead character, not Will Smith. I think they were also doing changes to protect whatever the investments they want to promote with Harley Quinn later. I still don't like how they keep changing her shorts to either shorts or like this kind of thong thing. Ugh.
I never noticed that in the movie. Does it change from scene to scene?
No. Well, yeah, the things you can't see, but watch the first trailer, and she has a scene where she walks up and Killer Croc's checking her out.
Okay,
And,
the Comic-Con one?
Yeah, the Comic-Con one. Look at her shorts are more shorts, like actual shorts. Like New Frontier Superman shorts.
Mhm.
You know? Like they go just right under the bum, but then you see the one later and they edited more of a like a little thong look, and I was just like, wow, you guys went to that distance.
I'll have to see that when I watch the Comic-Con one again.
It was pointed out in some tweets, and then I watched it once and I was like, whoa, I haven't gone around to do the comparison again, but I did see it. And it's just little things they're doing to kind of promote the characters that they want to invest in for later, you know? Again, it's not about the film anymore. It's about whatever they're trying to market, and I don't like that. That hurts it.
A couple of things that I want to touch on as we wrap up the retrospective here is one, now that we've talked about, and you know, we can go into deeper detail on some of the other characters like Boomerang, but I think, you know, the things that we discussed are really going to be highlighted when we get the Ayer cut, which is why I really wanted to talk about this.
Oh, yes.
Now that we've reflected on the film overall, how do you feel about this theatrical version, and will you go back and see it after the Ayer cut releases?
Hell no, man. I don't watch any. Sometimes, no, I just love director's cuts.
Yeah.
It's the whole freaking point. You know,
they're all called Snyder cuts now, by the way.
Yeah. Amen to that. Because it's just like, again, you go to the restaurant, you're like, can I have the chef special? All right, cool. And they give you the chef special. It's special because the chef made it, invented it, and put his art and craft and heart into it. Do you have the chef special, and then it's not the chef special that comes, but it's just half of it or a part of it with something else? It's just like, there's a huge point to it from the whole beginning that makes it unique, and it's the director. And when I say director, the type of director and what they do is, especially this type of director, what he does is he complements the characters, the actors, and everyone shines. He's a good director. Trust him. Let him do all that stuff. Now, I know there are some directors who are just new or green, or they're studio directors where they just do what the producer wants, and that's fine. That's a very television style, because I think a lot of these producers, they want to treat these movies like TV things, because when they do a TV episode of any series, you have an assembly cut, you have an editor's cut, you have a director's cut, you have an executive producer's cut, you have a producer's cut, and then it goes around all those circles until they're happy with something. But for film, it's like a one shot, a one moment. You can't approach it like that. And I feel like as time has gone on, I feel with, you know, the technology of film and TV advancing, where people watch movies at home, there's more accessibility to watching films and shows on the phone and all that. It's like, and then SAG and AFTRA are now like united. It's like that says, like, I think the TV style and the film style are having a collision based on the type of producers coming on to treat movies like TV series. And I don't think that's fair. That breaks the medium, and it hurts the cinematic experience in the long run. And I think that's a problem that we're facing right now with all these things. So David Ayer, who gets a different treatment than Snyder or James Gunn or whoever have you, is, I don't know what he's promised. If he's promised if his film comes out or not, or ever. It has to come out for that same reason. Because then when it does, I don't go back to theatrical cuts, because what's the point? That was the lie. That was the semi-beautiful lie that we were manufactured and given. And we get the more wholesome story. Like even friggin' The Fault in Our Stars. When that came out, I wanted to check out that movie, and I saw that there was a director's cut. So I was like, all right, let me go with that. I've only seen the director's cut of that film. I've only seen it twice, though. And, you know, well, I'm not seeing it again, but I didn't even bother with the theatrical. And not knowing the theatrical at all, the director's cut, nice film, beautiful, nice film, flows great. A few times I've seen only director's cuts because a lot of times I watch things. I watch things not always as they come out because I'm too busy watching movies I like again and again and again. Because I watch these to learn. Because I want to, I'm making my own indie films and I'm very happy with this genre. So when I see something I love, I watch it again and again so I can learn. And the most fruitful lessons I've learned was watching films that had a strong narrative because that's the whole point.
Yeah, you got to nail the narrative, and kind of the rest falls into place. And as long as there's so many movies that it's like, oh, the special effects aren't great, but the story's incredible. It's kind of like video games where the gameplay is amazing. The graphics might not be great, but the gameplay is incredible. I think that's the same with
100%, 100%. Same with films and all that. The fancy glitz and glams and special effects and all that will forever always be close to dated or dated fast. You can't get around that.
Yeah.
So focus on the heart of the character, which is the humanity of all these characters, and it goes from the making and everything. And that's something that we need to hold, because the more technological advances that we see with faces put on body doubles and special effects here and there, and digitally putting actors in there who have passed away, my personal feelings were moving further away from what makes storytelling from performance special, because then it's not to knock animation, but we have animation for that. But getting away from the heart of the characters is just always a bad thing, and focusing on the glitz and glam and not the people who make it amazing, like the actors and everything, is just backwards to me. And there's a lot of mess going on, but getting the air cut and more of these director's cuts, it's just going to be great. Like, have you ever rewatched the theatrical versions of Lord of the Rings, or you just enjoy the extended editions?
Neither. I don't like Lord of the Rings.
Okay, bad example. But either one, when you get that director's cut, it's like the theatrical. I don't know why you would go back on. The only film I do go back on with the theatrical cut is Jet Li's Fearless, the story of Ho Yun Ja, done by Ronnie Yu. I watched the unrated theatrical cut a few times, only because the director's cut of that, they didn't color correct the extended scenes to match the color correction of the first one. I think it was done by a different film house for the director's cut, so that one's a little jarring. So when you watch and get invested in the story, you can't tell, and it moves so smoothly. But I have watched the theatrical cut a few times of that one, just because of the color scheme is just so consistent on the theatrical as opposed to director's cut. That's the only one. But after that, it's director's cuts and nothing, no going back after that.
As much as I enjoy still the theatrical version of Suicide Squad, when we get the air cut, I also, and I guess it's very possible that I like the air cut less than the theatrical. Anything's possible. I haven't seen it. However, if it chances are I'm going to enjoy it more, I think I will also be on the boat of like, well, I enjoy it more, and it's what he wants. And again, it has nothing. This is the same conversation we had with Snyder's, where people kept saying, well, what if it's worse? And it's like, that's irrelevant. Like, make sure that the artist and the crew and the cast members get what they wanted released. That's the important thing. That's what we're fighting for. It's the artistic integrity. It's not about, well, this version's definitely better. It probably is. However, it's about what did they want? What, not the studio, but what did the artist wants? So that's one reason why I'm still supporting the air cut. And it's this weird situation where it's like as if I would have liked Justice League, and I also would have liked the Snyder cut. So in this case, I'll probably end up also still liking the theatrical and the air cut, but I don't see myself, once I'm again cursed with that knowledge of this is the full picture, I can't look at the theatrical cut the same way again, can't enjoy it the same way again, knowing what the real story was. And in one way, it's a little unfortunate because it kind of ruins this version of it, but it's already kind of started to change in my mind. Like I told you, these scenes where I'm like, okay, I know there was more to this. So I'm already kind of spoiled on the movie of this is already not complete. This is not right. As much as I like it, I don't love it. I like it, but it's not correct. So once we get that, that's also what I'm going to stick with.
I hear you, man. Because honestly, if people want to fit the theatrical cuts in a timeline, I have a perfect solution, bro. So we have two timelines with DC. It all starts with Man of Steel, then it splits with BVS. Put the theatrical on the left and put the Ultimate Director's Cut edition on the right. Then after BVS, you do Studio Squad on the left and Air Cut on the right. I think you see where I'm going with this.
Yep.
And then Wonder Woman's in the middle because they get all linked to both. And then you put Justice League on the left and you put Snyder Cut on the right. Unfortunately, Snyder Cut's over. And then after that, on the left, you put Aquaman, Wonder Woman 84, da 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 da. That's where the theatrical cuts can fit because those are the only that timeline of what the producers want and the execs want. This fits what they want because all these films coming out are what the mostly done by the new direction, the John's verse.
Yeah,
Justice
Hamadaverse or whatever.
Hamadaverse. I like calling it Justice verse because that's where they really stuck to their turn. They're always like, "Oh, the movie's bad, but it was a step in the right direction." They've been staying in that direction ever since.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they have.
Justice verse, that's what it is. Doesn't mean the films are bad. I mean, I still like Aquaman, but I know that's Justice verse. It's still a good film to enjoy. But it's still Justice first. You can't change that. But just because it's Justice first doesn't mean the movie's bad. It just could just suck more, or I don't know, whatever you want to look. It's just that part of that tainted timeline. And personally, I would like if it was like law that when they release home copy or home release that they have to release the director's cut along with it. Because I'm getting sick and tired of seeing a film and think it's a director and then find out later it's not. Or what's worse is when you're watching it and you feel it's not by the director. That's even more worse, It's like you go to a concert and you say, yo, I'm going to see Eminem. Then all of a sudden, Ariana Grande comes out. You're like, what? Yep. So when they release theatrical cuts, I would like them to say that this film was like first directed, have the director as original director, say original director, and then you say the movie was made by and put the studio's name right there. That way people know it's a studio film and that'll be fine. The fact that they're cutting up someone else's work and then saying that this is directed by them is blasphemy. That's like stupid to me. That's like, it's almost like a frame job. It's like, because you do all this on purpose and then you say it's their film and then you forget about them, leave them behind and forget about them. That's just like, that's so cruel, selfish.
Yeah, it feels like they should be illegal in some way. Like, why are you crediting this guy for work that he didn't do, type of thing?
If I'm never president, that's my campaign. Director's cuts. Vote for Kojay. That's the only thing I'll ever do. I'll be kicked out the next day.
You're like, but you got stuff done.
Fight Safe Cinema. Or whatever.
Well, the last thing I'll ask you here is
what's up?
Is now that we're both pretty confident that we're going to get the Ayer cut, aside from Joker and all the extra content that we're going to get from there, what's the other part of the Ayer cut that you're most excited to see? I
want to hear the score. I
nice.
love
Good
scores.
choice.
Sound and score are my favorite things in film. The whole surround sound experience has always like floored me. And when I was little, I used to listen to, in the 80s, I think like around 85, 86, has to be then. I would listen to cassette tapes, which were these little episodes and stories of like She-Ra or this one other character, Golden Girl, and G.I. Joe, or these other fantasy stories. It was just a cassette tape. And it was like old school storytelling where it was like a radio show, like The Shadow, where you hear a narrator and you hear the actor's voice act. And then on top of that, you hear all these ambiance of wind or sound effects, depending what's going on in the story. And I would go to sleep to that. And I would just put all these images in my head. And every time I listen to it, I always reimagine it differently. And sound is such a key part to storytelling that I love so much. When you take out because the thing is, when you put rock songs in, it muffles everything else. It's hard to focus on the ambiance and the footsteps or anything that brings that world real to you in front of you. So when it's more orchestral or it's more score based, even songs that they use can be score based too. If it's originally intended, it always complements the singing and it draws you in there. And I'd love to hear the crescendo of the themes come in and out and what they're going to be like. Because some songs, some scores, like even freaking what is it in Predator? It's like do 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 do. Or it's like Predator has this weird like this build-up sound that's kind of Nolan's Joker theme, with the long guitar thing. I think that they did it like just like a Predator did with that little echoey kind of drum roll building up and just going on forever, and it's just haunting. Like something's coming, and then cuts to a scene.
Yeah.
I love all that, and even the sound design of like people in the background, their paper or the echo in the hallway down below. It brings you so close because like that scene where in BVS, this is my favorite scene of BVS because of the sound design specifically. Is when Clark came to Lois. And while she was in the bathtub, and they had their little scene there, the sound design in her apartment, and you could hear the buses outside of it going down the street, is amazing sound design. I love that scene so much because you feel like you understand where she is in the city, what type of neighborhood. Her walls are kind of thin. So she's probably in the nicest, crummiest apartment because it's overpriced in the metropolis. I'm guessing it's just like New York, probably the most expensive place to live. And no, second, I think Hawaii is the number one. I like all that detail, and I'm looking forward to that with this film because I think it's definitely going to be prominent, especially with how moody all these shots are. I mean, the cinematography in what will be the Ayer cut, but what we see in Suicide Squad is just gorgeous, I think.
That's a great choice, man. That's an amazing, amazing choice. Aside from, I want to.
Good question. I never thought about it.
I want to see more from Viola Davis because she's an incredible actor. I want to see the original designs for Incubus and Enchantress, which David has shown us at this point. But
Do you think we'll get those?
I mean, if we got Steppenwolf redesigned, I think we can get those. I think that's very possible.
I mean, because if that's what's delaying it, I'm okay with that.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, whatever he wants to do, if David's happy with the theatrical designs, fine. But if he's not and he's getting more time to do them, great. But I think for me, it's that third act. You brought up the Jokers in there, but also that fight with Katana. There's those guards that are next to Enchantress that David Ayer kept posting pictures of, like the horned guards, which they just disappear in the theatrical version. Because I was watching really closely this time. Like, okay, when do they walk away or whatever? But
it was when we were looking, man. It's like Enchantress, like, you guys have been working hard. There's a shawarma shop around. Why don't you go there and have a little shawarma? And they're like, what the hell is shawarma? No one knows. I'm just kidding. It's good stuff. I love shawarma. But yeah.
They're just gone, and she just starts fighting them, and that's one thing that, if he's showing those designs, then there must have been something with them, something whatever it was. They fight the Suicide Squad, or they transform into some. I don't know what it is, but I want to know those answers.
Yeah, that would be nice. And I think, I don't know. David Ayer's a different guy when he's dropping these hints or these little snippets of what we've seen. I can't help but think, is this what we're going to see later? Because when James Gunn's film came out, it was like, what, the Hollywood Reporter was asking about Ayer cut to other people. To me, that was huge.
It's massive.
What is it? The trades, the journalists? I don't know what you want to call them nowadays. But they are asking about Ayer cut. I was like, okay. So I have a question for you, if it's okay.
Yeah, of course.
What tells you so much that Ayer cut's coming out?
I think by the way that the Snyder Cut performed, because it sold incredibly well on digital Blu-ray. It still continues to sell out on the digital physical market. The Funko Pops did incredibly well. The exclusives sold out. You've got all this merch still coming out from Prime One Studios, Sideshow, Collectibles. It's got legs that are just continuing. They're still coming out with more Snyder Cut stuff for people to buy. And people like us who know that you need to vote with your dollar are buying it as we can. Action figures, whatever it is. The special soundtrack that they release. So that to me tells me that once, like, as much as Warner Brothers doesn't want to do the Ayer cut, they also didn't want to do the Snyder Cut. But like AT&T came down and said, we're going to do it. I think Discovery is going to do the same if it hasn't already happened, because it sounds like there were conversations happening when they needed us to make it trend a couple months back. So it's very possible that it's already happening and we don't know about it. They haven't made it official. Maybe they don't know how to release it yet. But I don't know. That just tells me that there's a lot of positivity for it. Ayer hasn't told us to stop, just like Zach hasn't told us to stop with Restore the Snyderverse. So I've got more than hope.
I love it, man.
You seem pretty confident too. What do you think?
I think it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
Just
do you know something we don't?
No, I wish I did. But what you said was clear because that on top of what I said of that those questions, it's
Yeah.
like the smart thing to do is the domino effect. The only thing is for me is I'm all jaded and skeptical on Warner Brothers in general, but I think this last faction, like Hamada people and all that, before the merger, if they do this, I think it would help them with whatever's going to go on with the merger, with the Discovery merger. They want to like reestablish bridges with like directors or something and storytellers and listen more to the fans. I've heard that throughout this whole thing about the merger, and I've heard that before.
Yeah.
But if they commit to it, releasing the air cut is a really good step in that direction, and it'll make everybody happy. Because if we get in the business of making everybody happy, which other things are doing, other pro wrestling, animation, whatever, that's actually more comic accurate because we're used to different comic titles. We're used to reading different storylines with like Detective Comics, Batman, Outsiders, Action Comics, Superman, whatever. Adventures of Superman, whatever comic title you have, we're used to multiple iterations. Why is it that there has to be this strict one path way when they don't even honor any kind of continuity? Might as well just put out, what was originally intended and promised, and then everyone's happy. Then I think we'll be a better place just in general for them. And then we'll have our movie, so I'll be happy.
Oh yeah, and we'll continue to vote with our dollar.
That's key. It's an investment. Everything we have in our place, it's an investment to what we're like. Hey, telling you, this is the good shit.
Yeah, and people kept asking me, like, when I was buying all the versions of the Snyder Cut, like one guy's like, "You're what's the point of this?" And it's like, it's called voting with your dollar. If I want more of something, I'm going to pay to, it's not about the tweets work. We know that. But at this point, it's like, there's also another voting, and that's with your money. So that's business. Fucking the bottom line is what it's about.
That's why I brought my signs to all those wrestling shows. I don't usually buy $600 tickets a seat. Oh my God. Ramen. I lived off of ramen for a year, but it's like voting with your dollar. I totally agree because we got to get the word out. And it's cool because if people like it, they'll love it. It's because it's the word is entertainment, and entertainment is like music. It'll hit you hard and it won't hurt you at all. And if it's not your cup of tea, then drink something else. It's chill. It's just that there's something very special that deserves to be seen and known because people put their blood, sweat, and tears into making such films. Don't disrespect that.
Very well put, Kojay. You have been extremely generous with your time. I want to give you.
I think you have. I'm sorry.
I want to give you a huge thanks for doing this for the Brokehead Core and for fans of the Snyderverse and for fans of David Ayers, just discussing the theatrical cut and getting excited about the air cut because it seems like we're getting it, and it seems like if someone out there learns a little bit more about what the air cut is, then I think we did our job.
I hope so.
So go ahead and let them know, too, where they can find you on YouTube, what kind of content you're putting out that's coming out. And there will be links in the description of today's episode. But in case they're driving, I want them to know where they can find you.
All right. Well, you can find me at Lord Kojay. It's either 2 words or 1 word. On DeviantArt and Twitch, it's Lord_Kojay. And you can find me on DeviantArt, Vero, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, but my main hubs that I love the most are Instagram and YouTube. YouTube, my content is mostly video game content. I put out like game streaming and then some other creative videos I put together because I used to dance and I did film, independent film. So in time, I'm going to put a bunch of different stuff. I'm kind of treating my channel like Netflix, but for the stuff I like. So it's very niche, but it's a lot of fun. Have a good time. And check it out if you're bored. It should be fun. But I'm always voicing my opinion and just trying to encourage other people's art and whatever, and just sharing my art when I can do it. I'm just having a good time, and I'm happy to be here. Check me out when you can. Absolutely. Please do. If you're a member of our Discord, whenever Kojay puts up a video, it puts up a message. So if you're a part of our Discord, you'll see him on there, and you'll be able to subscribe to his YouTube channel that way too. But otherwise, thank you again, Kojay, for being on, and for the Brokehead Core member on the other side for tuning in for this special retrospective. If you're a Patreon backer, just like Kojay is, much thanks to Kojay. You're enjoying this episode 4 weeks ahead of everyone else, but otherwise, if you're enjoying this as it publicly releases, again, a huge thanks for tuning in.
fan and for sticking around till the very end. I've been Daniel, joined by Lord Koj and Brocat Core. All will be well.
Hey, much love and God bless.
So I've got a little bit of trivia that I want to run through. The Suicide Squad is the 4th live-action superhero film to win an Academy Award. This is after Batman 1989, Spider-Man 2 from 2004, and The Dark Knight in 2008. Some people do count Superman 1978 because it got a Special Achievement Academy Award, but otherwise, as far as like the actual categories, Suicide Squad would be the 4th. And we almost got alternate versions of this movie. So Tom Hardy was originally cast as Rick Flag, but had to drop out due to The Revenant, which came out in 2015. And I would have been really excited about Tom Hardy. He's an amazing actor. But Ryan Gosling was actually approached and sought out first for the role of the Joker, but he turned it down because of the studio's multi-picture deal that they were requiring. What do you think about this other universe where we could have been watching a Suicide Squad starring Tom Hardy and Ryan Gosling?
No offense, but to me, I'm not impressed. It's just kind of how it is. Because when I did work in the film industry for a bit, I worked mostly in castings, and we're kind of used to having all the schedule and conflicts. So I've seen like on table alternate versions and alternate directions we go with a certain character with a certain actor, and some I was like yes, and some was like, oh, I wish we got so and so instead. But it all eventually works out. It's just kind of like conception process where you hope for a certain character, but you end up with whatever is created at the end or available, and then you just make it work. And I'm just kind of used to that. It's not like, oh, we missed out, because if it never happened, it never happened. It was just a different direction. Like Tom Cruise could have been like Tony Stark,
Sure.
Just kind of little things you look back like, that would have been interesting. But when it's casted and set and they're filming, then that's what it's going to be from the beginning to me. And so when I hear these other things, I'm like, oh, that could have been neat. I could see that, but it doesn't feel like a loss to me, if that makes sense. It's more of a process than a loss. And I think because all these actors, they'll just bring something unique to the table. When they're such actors who take their craft so seriously, it's never a loss anyways.
I'll always be hung up on the Tom Hardy one because I remember being incredibly.
See Tom Hardy though.
Yeah. I reported on it here on the show. We talked about it and how great Tom Hardy is, and then they replaced him with I forgot the actor's name, but I know him from House of Cards, and he was a villain in House of Cards. So I forever associate him with that bad character. So I'll still never live that down. I'm like, you're that guy that was trying to take down Kevin Spacey. Fuck you.
So I got lucky. I didn't see House of Cards until later.